Good evening, all. Sorry, I'm just trying to set this up. I hadn't refreshed my screen. So yeah, I don't know how many people are here. I'm really sorry. I've never done webinars before, so I'm just trying to get my head around it. And I was hoping to have interaction. I don't know if I can see a comment page, because when I'm playing my slideshow, it takes up my full screen. So it's something that I need to do. But I'm going to talk. I'm going to go through it. Hopefully, some of you stay. I can't even ask to see if you're hearing me, which again, not ideal. I'm going to live and learn, and hopefully, obviously learn a lot more about this, and hopefully start doing more of these webinars as I go forward. And again, you can see my contact details at the bottom. My email address will be shown at the end as well. So any feedback you have, I would love to hear it, because I need to, hear from you guys. I need to know what people want. I need to know what will benefit people, because the whole idea of doing this is so people can, get use out of it and learn something. So again, this is called Understanding Social Anxiety, the Foundation for Recovery, and it's based on my own recovery. What I learned, what I needed to learn to get through this, and then subsequently what I've learned through helping other people. So again, a quick table of contents. We're going to go through what social anxiety is, what it is that keeps us stuck, because I think this is a key one, where social anxiety, depression, it can be very, very hard to break free from. You keep on thinking you've done it, and it will just drag you back. And a lot of times you'll have maybe a week or two where you feel, yes, I'm doing this. I know this technique works. This is fantastic. And then something will happen, and we'll just be dragged back into it, and become very demoralizing after a while, when you're kind of keep on trying and keep on being dragged back. Then we talk about redefining social anxiety just to ourselves, and how the importance of self-image is, and kind of how we label ourselves. Obviously, power self-image next. Then our focus, what we focus on, and how that impacts our reality, or our experience of reality. The power of now, again, that title is based on an Eckhart Tolle book, but just with mindfulness and meditation, how important that is to be just living in the present, facing fears, to be able to just step forward and not see things as being fears, but to see them as just something that we can learn from, and then actions we can take. So what is social anxiety? And I know this is something that everybody on this call knows and everybody on this call has gone through. And this is going to be my experience. I should probably just tell you my story beforehand, that probably from the age of 11 or 12, I started to feel really anxious and insecure in who I was. And I started avoiding people, kind of burying myself in my books and hoping that that would kind of just distract me, but also thinking that once I leave school and once I leave home, then life will be better. I remember thinking at the young age of maybe 13, 14, that I can't wait to go to university where I can reinvent myself, which says it all, that I really was so insecure in who I was that I didn't think, I thought the only way was to try and change who I was. And then when I was around 19 or 19, I had a breakdown when I went to university, and subsequently went through university with lasting a month, dropping out, lying to people, pretending that I was doing well in my studies while sitting at home being terrified. I was then diagnosed as being depressed when I was 18. When I was 19, I was subsequently diagnosed as being social phobic. And a lot of that, I remember getting the diagnosis and thinking, this is brilliant. At least there's something that people know what's wrong with me, with the hope that they could cure me. And then after maybe a few months, realizing that nothing has changed and kind of feeling even more helpless from that. And I went through that for many years. And then when I was 28, I kind of stumbled across positive psychology, which really, really helped. And that was when I started my journey out of this. And it was then a year or two later when I started to step in to help people and realized that my experience was worthwhile, just to even understand what social anxiety is, to understand what depression is, to have that empathy with other people who are going through similar. I think it's a hugely powerful thing. And it's the one thing that I'd love to do in this group, is to get people to help each other, because it's something that there is great power, there's great knowledge within this group. And the hardest thing that people to help are ourselves. And then subsequently went positive psychology, which worked, and then started discovering spiritual psychology, which is a subject that fascinates me, and I think it has so many answers. And again, that is just the power of now, just bring yourself back to the moment and being in touch with who you are. But again, things that I went through was kind of fear of judgment, a dread of social situations, fear associated with being the center of attention. I really wanted to be social, I wanted to be out with people, but at the same time, that terrified me. Again, a need to rehearse conversations, that if I was going to talk to somebody, I would run that conversation through my head numerous times. One of the worst was making a telephone call. I remember I'd actually write down what my conversation was going to be. And if I had to ring up a utilities company or something like that, I'd actually write down how I'd introduce myself. I'd write down what my name was, as if I'd forget that. Obviously, when it's out with people, avoiding eye contact, and a feeling a need to be alone. And I've put unhappily alone, because it's okay to be alone. That's fine. But when you're moving away from people and feeling miserable, that's where it can be really tough. And wanting to socialize, but being paralyzed by thought, and thinking was something that I could not stop. I thought about everything. Every day was thinking, and thinking about thinking, etc. Racing thoughts when in company, where I'd be having a conversation with somebody, and at the same time, I'd be thinking to myself, how can I get out of this? It was nearly this duality going on. How can I get out of this? And remember, you'd be coming up with excuses and dismissing excuses because they weren't valid enough, trying to think of something to get out. And then when I would leave, I'd be met with this massive feeling of relief, but instantly followed by huge guilt. And I'd go home and just beat myself up for the next few days about having to get out of it. And then after having conversations with people, just replaying them over and over again, just looking for things that I said that were stupid or whatever, or that I judged as being stupid. And obviously this comes from low self-esteem, feelings of not being good enough, and a need to improve oneself before I can be whoever I want to be. And I think this is a big thing, that we're always talking about self-improvement, and self-improvement is an amazing thing to do, but it also puts pressure on ourselves. It's also an admittance to ourselves that we're not good enough, which is the paradox. We have to be moving forward. It's studying ourselves. Self-study is amazing, but never think that we need to improve ourselves. We need to start seeing ourselves as being, yeah, we are who we are, and that's okay, and we're good enough. A lot of anxiety comes to the stories we attach to not being good enough, the stories we attach to ourselves of who we should be, etc., etc. So a great way to start, and with anything, and I have a few exercises in this, again, because I don't have the interaction and I can't see comments, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because ultimately I'd love to see what people are coming back with, but I don't know how to do that. So what I did is to ask yourself, what would my life be like without social anxiety? So imagine you've had an amazing year where you've beaten social anxiety, you're feeling confident, you're feeling good. How would you know? What would your life be like? What would be different? What would be different both personally, professionally? What would your relationships be like? And just ask yourself this, because this is a key thing for getting out of social anxiety. That a flaw in me trying to beat it for so long was that I went with, when I beat social anxiety, then I will have a great social life. Then I'll have lots of friends. Then I'll feel at ease in work meetings, etc., etc. But it was when I beat social anxiety then. So it's kind of the focus was on social anxiety. This was paralyzing me. I needed to beat that, and then my life could be good. What I subsequently learned was that it was by creating a great social life was how I beat social anxiety. That to move into this and to move through it, and to not, and I'm not saying this is easy, but to try not to let it hold you back on how you feel. I'm just wondering if, I wish I could see comments, because I'm wondering, is this coming up on screen, what I have? I'm going to just try and get out of that and see what's coming up on my Google Hangouts. I'm hoping you can see these, and apologies if I'm rambling now. It's I can do with a bit of interaction. Okay, that's popped up now on YouTube. That's strange. When I go into slideshow, you can't see it. I might just go through, I'll play it again, slideshow, and see. So again, this exercise sheet that I created and something that I used, and it was, what if social anxiety didn't exist? So to imagine social anxiety never exists in your life, how would it be different? Okay. Sorry, I'm really sorry about this. I see when I go into slideshow, it hasn't gone blank for you, but on my thing it has. And then when I go out of it, you can see it, which is really ugly with the seeing my tabs, etc. And my beautiful animations won't work. But anyway, this, I'll go through this. I'm really sorry. I'll polish this up and learn how to use this properly. But again, just this is an exercise that I would recommend everybody to do just as a starting point. Again, with that thing of, when I beat social anxiety, I will do this. But then the realization that you have to flip that and go, it's by actually doing what you want to do and kind of moving towards that is how you beat social anxiety. So this is a really important question to ask. What if social anxiety didn't exist? How would my life be different? What would I do? So number one there, just list 5 things that would be different if you did not have social anxiety in your life. And do this without judgment. Do this, just try and have a freedom with it and go. And it could be, I'd have a great social life. It could be, I'd be giving talks at work. It could be lots of different things. And don't let yourself be hampered by what you think is the reality of what social anxiety is. Then with those 5, to list them in order of which would be, give you the greatest pleasure, which would be the most important to you. And this is about setting up kind of something to, it's a easy way to kind of set up goals, or a method of setting up goals where you have something to aim for. Because a lot of time we're trying to beat social anxiety, but that's our focus and that's everything. And we kind of become paralyzed by that. And what you will realize is that the more we try and beat social anxiety, the harder it is to do. But again, when you have that list of 5, to just pick one and detail how doing this or having this would transform your life. For me, it was social life. If I was going out and had friends and was able to do things that I was terrified of doing, then my life would be so much better. And it really was. But it was only when I, with positive psychology, when I learned to actually focus on that, that changed. And then 4, what steps could you take to achieve this? And again, don't hamper yourself. Don't get too caught up in this, but don't hamper yourself by, as you say, the reality of things. Just dream. And sometimes it's easier to maybe imagine somebody else. What steps would they take if they wanted to achieve this, if you were helping them? So I'm going to go into what keeps us stuck. And I think once you have that goal in place, it's good to have something to aim for. But we need an awareness and an understanding of things that go on that make social anxiety hard to beat. So this is about the theory of learned helplessness. And this is a lyric, and I remember listening to this. I was a big Nirvana fan, and when I say that to people, a lot of people say, well, no wonder you're depressed. But there was something about Kurt Cobain's lyrics and his music that really connected with me. And if you go back through it, you'll realize, and anybody who knows him will realize, the depression played a big part in his life. But this is a lyric from one of his songs, and it's, I miss the comfort in being sad. And this is, when I remember hearing this and thinking, that makes logically no sense, but it sums up who I am and where I am. That if I felt happy, I'd start worrying about when depression was going to come back. Or if I felt comfortable in a social situation, I'd start worrying about, well, when is my anxiety going to come? Which obviously made me more anxious. And there was this thing, it was as if this thing just held on to me, that this sadness was my comfort zone. That no matter how good things felt outside or how happy I felt, I needed to go back to what felt comfortable. Which ties in perfectly with this theory of learned helplessness. And this is going to explain a little bit why social anxiety is hard to beat and just how this affects you. So again, this is an experiment by a psychologist called Martin Seligman, who I think he's known as the godfather of, the father of positive psychology. And he came up with this experiment. I think it was just to judge behavior in animals to see about if there's any link with humans. And he was really surprised by the results that he came up with. And this experiment was done back in the late 60s, I believe, and it is cruel, and apologies to anybody who's a dog lover. It isn't a wholesome experiment, but it does, if you can just kind of remove yourself from these poor dogs and what they went through and see what we've learned from this and how this ties in with what we're going through. So we got 3 groups of dogs, and group 1, he just put the dog in a harness. So the dog couldn't move, was in a harness, and then they released him, and that was okay. The second group, the dog was in a harness, but it was administered an electric shock tied to its leg. And the guy who's doing the experiment would press the button, the shock would go through the dog's body. But the group 2 dogs were showing that there was a lever or a button that if they pressed, the shock would stop. So the shock would be administered, they'd press the button and would stop. Group 3 were in a harness, connected to electric shock, but they had no button. So the shock would start at random times, it would stop at random times. They had no control over what was going on. And they went through this, I don't know what the time length was, but they ran it over a few times and probably duration of whatever to see what the results were. And that was step 1 of it. Step 2 was they were put in a box with a low partition. So there was one part of the floor was, again, could be administered a shock. The other part was a safe zone. So the safe zone, the shock zone, and the dog was put in the shock zone. And then the electric shock would be administered. And what they found out, group 1, the dogs who were just in the harness, no shock. Once the shock came through the floor, the dog would just jump over the partition. It was pretty easy for it to do. Group 2 dogs, the dogs that were administered a shock but could turn it off, they did the same. Once they got the shock, they knew they had control, they would do something. And the really tragic thing, but really interesting thing was the dogs in group 3, the ones that the shock would be come on and disappear at random times, they felt they had no control over it. A vast majority of them just lay and accepted the shock and didn't try to move. Even though they were going through pain, it was just normal to them. And I think this is what we go through with social anxiety, that we get so caught up in it, that this sadness and this kind of isolation becomes normal, that we don't see a way out. We think this is just, as it is. And what I would ask you to even just look at this and go, how would you help the dogs in group 3? What could you do to help them? And this is really a question of how can you help people who have social anxiety? How can you help yourself with this? And why is it important to be aware of this? 1, we need to go easy on ourselves. It's so easy to beat ourselves up for, not being able to get out of this. it's programmed within us to kind of go for our comfort zone or go for whatever, we feel comfortable with, even if that is negative. So to go easy on yourself for not being able to beat this yet, that's okay. And by going easy on yourself, you're allowing yourself space to find answers. Also, a need to take a step back to see the bigger picture. Again, this is the classic when a friend asks for advice and you can help them because you don't have that same emotional attachment to the issue as you do with yourself. I think its hardest thing is to help ourselves. But again, with that experiment, take a step back and go, there are answers. That was a small partition that dog could easily have jumped over if it knew to look for an answer. And it's the same with social anxiety. If we can take a step back and just try not to get so emotionally caught up in it. And again, I'm not saying this is easy, but to give ourselves a bit of space, then all of a sudden answers will come in. And again, this is where spiritual psychology comes into it, and something that I'd love to go into more depth, maybe at a later date, is this need to surrender and kind of stop trying to beat things. Stop trying to get out of this. And I don't mean stop trying as to give up. I mean to stop trying as in to free your mind from trying and just allow answers to come. And again, this is something that took me years to get, and it's something that intellectually we can get it, but it still might not make sense. It's something we need to experience, and something I would recommend. I have books at the end I'll recommend reading which go into spiritual psychology and go into a lot of this. But again, to notice that this phenomenon, and I really shouldn't use a word that I can't pronounce, and I had practiced this and I can't get it, that word with a P, to notice that this is why answers don't seem obvious. This is why we can feel stuck within this. Again, apologies for not having this slideshow. It's really annoying. And I know, or I imagine a lot of you missed a few slides at the start where it was just me talking because it wasn't coming up on the screen. But what I started to do was try and redefine what my social anxiety was and my depression was. And I started to look at what I wanted. And I wanted to be happy. That was my goal in life. I wanted to just feel happy. And I looked at happiness as being an emotion. I looked at depression and anxiety as being a disease or a disorder or something. And I knew I needed to start looking at it on kind of equal plane. That if I could see depression and anxiety as being an emotion, then all of a sudden I could start linking that to happiness and seeing a pathway forward. And depression is an emotion, anxiety isn't necessarily an emotion, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But the question I asked myself, and this is back before, the start of my journey really, is where do emotions come from? And the answer was revealed to me in a book called Stop Thinking, Start Living by Richard Carlson, which I'll go into in a few minutes. This is something that I came across by listening to Bob Proctor, where he talks about anxiety and what it is. And a lot of us look at anxiety and say we have to treat the anxiety without really knowing where anxiety comes from. And what anxiety really is the manifestation of fear in the body, that we will feel fear and then the body will feel anxious. And really it's a sign to move. That if you go back to our ancestors, you get isolated from the tribe, you're out in the woods on your own, you start getting fearful, you have that anxiety, it's indication to move. It's an indication to try and find people to get back to where we are. But where does fear come from? Fear comes from doubt or worry. And that is the thought that goes. There's some thought of doubt or some thought of worry that then leads to fear, which then leads to anxiety. But then the anxiety loops around and increases that doubt, increases that worry, increases the fear, the anxiety increases, and we get caught up in this cycle. One thing that I would say is that anxiety is natural. It's a needed response. As we were saying about our ancestors, they needed to feel this anxiety to be safe. The majority of us are safe now, yet anxiety is through the roof. And it's something that even in trying to beat anxiety, and it's a good thing to ask yourself, is my pursuit of recovery actually causing more anxiety? Because this is something that I realized, that I was trying so hard to be positive early on in my thing that I felt nearly the opposite feeling. It's as if, I don't know which law it is, but Newton has this law that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And it's nearly the same thing, that when we try and convince ourselves that we're happy, it nearly brings up the opposite feeling within us. It's nearly as if we're trying to lie to ourselves. And I've hand on the fire, which obviously makes no sense if you read that without context. But reading a book, and I cannot remember what the book was, came across this metaphor where it was just about anxiety and depression, etc. That if you put your hand on a fire, you will feel pain, and that pain will be indication to remove your hand, to take action. So when we feel anxiety, it really is just an indication that something isn't right within us. We need to take action. We need to do something. Yet we start focusing on trying to treat the anxiety rather than trying to take a step back and see, well, it's doubt or worry, or how true is this story that I'm telling myself? And that would be like trying to treat your hand, the pain, while your hand is still in the fire. That you might be treating the pain, you might be numbing your hand, you might feel a bit of relief, but your hand is still in the fire. You have to remove it. It's still, things are getting worse the longer it's there. And it's just something to know, that to nearly take your focus away from the anxiety. The anxiety is the result. And obviously we want to get rid of that. That's our ultimate goal. But to bring it back to, okay, that comes from fear. What am I afraid of? What am I worried about? And it's just about bringing it back, slowing down, and trying to get some context over this. Because a lot of time we just feel anxious and we don't know why. And we feel the anxiety is the problem rather than the result of something problematic. But again, this thing, a thought precedes an emotion. This book, Richard Carlson's book, Stop Thinking, Start Living. And this is one thing that really changed everything for me. That back in 2008, I had, well, actually 2007, come into positive psychology. It all made sense. I thought it was good, but it worked for anybody else, but not for me. Like, how could I make this work? And I really didn't know about how I could kind of regain control with this. And there was one story he had, and it was about snow. And it says a person gets up in the morning, goes to the window, pulls the blind, looks outside and sees it's snowing and goes, yes, I cannot wait for this. And they're thinking about all the fun they can have in snow. Go outside, play with their friends. They might get a day off school or off work. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be the best day ever. 2 doors down, same street, somebody gets up, goes to the window, pulls their blind, looks outside, sees it's snowing and goes, oh no, it's going to be so cold. What if my car doesn't start? I'll have to get a bus. I don't like buses. And they feel miserable by it. If you ask the first person, why are you so happy? They would look at you and go, the snow. It's obvious. Like, what a ridiculous question. If you ask the second person why he's so miserable, they would give you the exact same answer. The snow. What a ridiculous question. But what is the snow? It's just snow. It's neutral. So what is the difference between the person feeling happy and the person feeling miserable? It's the thoughts that they put to it, the stories they tell are based around this neutral thing called snow. And all of a sudden, it's a simple thing that a thought precedes an emotion. And with that, I was there, okay, well, if I can start focusing on my thinking and notice what thoughts I'm having, then I can start to change how I feel. And this does make a lot of sense. But again, I'd say it works at a certain level. It's not the answer. And I'll go into why later on a bit. So again, this is another thing of just about thoughts. That thought leads to a feeling. How we feel leads to what action we take or our inaction. And what action we take leads to results. The results we see then leads to the thoughts we have, which leads to feeling, leads to action, leads to results. And it's this cycle. A lot of time we focus on the results. We focus on what's outside of ourselves. As in, I was at a party and things weren't good, or, you know, just nobody liked me, etc., etc. And then that feeds into us and we think that's what I need to change. I need to start changing external things. While in reality, it's the thoughts around things that we need to start changing. How we see ourselves. And again, just to go in and see what's within us rather than continually looking outside and what's out. The two things there that we really can control are our thoughts to a certain degree and our action to a certain degree. The feelings and the results will just come and flow from that. And this is the thing that a lot of us kind of look at environment as being the issue, that if I had a better job, again with me, if I had gone to a different school, my life would be different. If I had grown up in a different area, my life would be so much better. Without realizing that, you know, I was in control. It was always what was going on within. And this is something, and again, please send me an email at the end of this if you want to see it, but this is something that I recommend anybody does, or anybody, I recommend everybody do, if you want to start beating this, is to keep a thought mood diary. Again, I had this slideshow set up that this would fill with text and it would look really good. It's probably too small for most of you to see, but again, I can send you this. And it's basically what it is to monitor what goes on for you. And then if there was something that didn't go well, to number one, how did you feel? And just fill that in. I felt sad and anxious. Number two, what happened to cause these feelings? There was a party to which I did not go to because I have nothing to say and everybody would just think I'm weird. All these ridiculous thoughts to go on. So that caused the feelings. What thoughts did you have at the time? And this is the key, to start noticing what was going on in your mind. And this is really just to bring an awareness to what you're thinking, rather than, our thoughts could just be so repetitive and can just come from nowhere and can be all over the place, that it just happens, and it can be just as if we're breathing. It's just this natural thing. What we want to do is start bringing an awareness to that, to see, okay, what am I thinking? And to just really, this isn't about changing things, keeping a thought mood diary. It's about seeing the link, becoming aware of the link, experiencing this link. So again, are these thoughts positive or negative? They'll most normally be negative. What negative thinking patterns did you see? And here I've got extreme thinking, emotional reasoning, devastation thinking. And my next slide is going to be going through the different thought patterns. And what evidence do you have to support these? And actually, if you do take a step back to a lot of this, we don't have evidence. But because the stories we tell ourselves are so real, and this is something that the mind cannot differentiate between what is real and not real. And to just demonstrate this, I'd like if you could just close your eyes for a second. Obviously, I can't see you. I doubt other people can see you either. So just close your eyes and imagine in your right hand you're holding a lemon. And I just want you to notice the dimples on it and just kind of feel it and squeeze and just imagine it. Just imagine what it's like. And now I want you to rip it open. So it's in two halves. And you can feel the juice is squirting out of it. You can see now, just looking at it, you can see the pulp. You can see the juice kind of dripping from it. And I want you to just notice that. And then I want to just bring it slowly up to your mouth and take a bite out of this lemon. And take a good bite and then notice the sensation that you get. Normally when we do this, you can stop doing that now. Normally what we do with this, we start getting a little bit of saliva or a little change in our feeling by bringing that lemon up to our mouth and biting into it. Yet you know that lemon is not real. Yet your body reacts as if it is real. And this is the power of the thoughts that we have, that because we think it, we believe it's real. Our body reacts as if it's real. And then all of a sudden it becomes more reinforced. So by keeping a thought mood diary, it's really about becoming aware of the power of your thinking, becoming aware of the impact your thinking can have in your life. And this, I'm not talking about controlling your thoughts. I'm just talking about becoming aware of it, because a lot of people can start blaming themselves. I know that was my reaction, that if my thoughts are causing this, then I'm to blame for it. And it's not that way at all. And I'd never, ever say that. So again, when we're talking about being easy on yourself, make sure you are. And again, here I have the negative thinking patterns where we've extreme thinking, only seeing things in this extreme, seeing things in black and white with no middle ground. As in, I could not answer that question in the interview. This means I must be stupid. Polarization. Even though we chatted all evening, I did say that one silly thing. She must think I'm a fool. Personalizing. She hasn't replied to my email yet. Obviously, she does not want to have anything to do with me. Emotional reasoning. I feel stupid, so therefore I must be stupid. And this is the key thing, to notice what we feel and what we think is not the truth. It's a story we attach to things. But in our world, it can seem very, very true. Overgeneralization. She did not say hi to me. It must be that she doesn't like me. Devastation thinking. If I cannot do something perfectly, then I'm a failure. Mind reading. They're talking to each other a lot more than you're talking to me. They obviously wish I was not here. And again, this really ties back into, I think, with social anxiety, that feeling of being a burden, which I definitely felt. I felt if I was around people, I was, they would be much better off, they'd be much happier if I was not around. And that was mind reading. That was kind of making up these stories, assuming what people were thinking without having a clue. Magnifying, minimizing. helping my friends study still does not make up for that time I got angry with them. Kind of building up something that you've done in the past and minimizing something that you're doing now. And it's always at your expense. Assumptions. I'm sure to fail. There's no point in even trying. And this is something that really comes into, I guess, mental well-being or whatever, is that we nearly predict our failures before we even start and then stop. And again, this is again with recovery, that we want to recover, but we just make this assumption that we can't, that I've tried before, so I'm not going to work again. And then should statements. I ought to have gone to the party. Everybody's having a great time but me. And this is the thing, that we don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be getting caught up in a world of shoulds, because it really doesn't help at all. This is a quote from Tony Robbins, which ties into this nicely, where he says, stress, anger, and sadness, these feelings don't come from facts. They come from the meaning that we give these facts. And again, coming back to the snow story, to notice the meaning that we give to things. When we're feeling anxious in a situation, what is the story that we're attaching to this? Because a lot of time we are in a situation, we feel anxious, and we feel we should be able to change the situation or change who we are. But to notice that our experience comes from the meaning that we give to that situation, or the meaning, the story we tell ourselves based in these areas, is key to just starting a recovery. So here we're going to the power of self-image. And this is a book that I'd recommend reading. It's a book written in the 1960s about self-image, and by a guy called Maxwell Maltz. The book is called Cybernetics. And the majority of books that you read on self-image or on self-improvement, self-development, will hold a lot of this. It's one of the most complete books I've ever read. It's absolutely incredible. But Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and somebody come in with a disfigurement or something they wanted to change, he'd change it and they'd go off feeling a lot happier. That was the normal thing. But then he noticed that there were certain people who, no matter what changes he made, they would find other problems. They'd sometimes be convinced that there was no change. And he realized that it wasn't as simple as just changing somebody's look to get them to feel different, that there was something deeper. And he'd experimented with that and started to help people on a kind of psychological level as much as on the physical level, and came up with this thing about self-image. And it's a book well worth reading. It's amazing. So what is self-image? Self-image is our own personal image of ourselves. And it's so interesting that we always play things in movies. We'll always see things in pictures or whatever. That I say, okay, imagine yourself in a social situation. You will imagine yourself in there. If you're feeling confident, you'll imagine yourself being there and it being easy. If you hate social situations, you'll imagine yourself there and you'll feel scared. And it's basically, I'm asking you to imagine. You can imagine whatever you want. We should be able to imagine ourselves being there and being the most popular person in the room. But our self-image won't allow ourselves to do that. That our self-image feels it needs to stay with what it is. It needs to be consistent with what it is. So self-image exists as a mental image and comes from our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about how we should fit in, etc., etc. And it's the filter through which we see the world. And this is key, filter through which we see the world. To notice that how we see the world isn't necessarily the truth. How we see the world is very much based on our experiences and the stories that we tell ourselves and our self-image. And again, self-image can really become self-imposed limits with us. That sentence made no sense. It can become self-imposed limits. Basically, our self-image can limit us. If I'd written that correctly. So then we see the responses we have programmed ourselves to see. And this is an extract from Cybernetics. And Maxwell Maltz says, when the self-image is intact and secure, you feel good. When it is threatened, you feel anxious and insecure. When your self-image is adequate and one that you can wholesomely be proud of, you feel self-confident. You feel free to be yourself and to express yourself. You function at your optimum. When it is an object of shame, you attempt to hide rather than express it. Creative expression is blocked. And this is key. That last sentence is really what social anxiety is. When it is an object of shame, when your self-image is an object of shame, when you look at yourself and are nearly shameful of who you are, or in a situation where you feel a burden or whatever, then you attempt to hide it rather than express it. You attempt to hide from the world. You attempt to hide yourself because you see yourself as being your self-image, which you are ashamed of or feel is a burden. And then creative expression is blocked. And this is key, because creative expression is really how we find our answers to get out of this. Yes, we can really block ourselves by trying to hide these things and deny ourselves the chance to find answers. So all your actions, feelings, is start to build this up to create a new self-image where we feel more confident or whatever. And again, just going back to this cycle, that, okay, what? Yeah, okay, sorry, I thought I had stopped. Again, these are meant to pop up at different things, but the results are the outcome we see. That's what we focus on. Our thoughts, that's the input. That's the starting point. And key to our thoughts is the story that we tell ourselves. This is not going to make any sense without the animation, because you can see there's lots of different words that should not be there at the same time. But basically, with self-image, I'm going to fly through this, is to imagine life as making a cake is a metaphor for life. That if you put in good quality ingredients and go through the right process, you will see great results. You'll see tasty results. You'll eat tasty results. Our life is the same. The thoughts that we put in are our ingredients. And then how we process them, what way they come, they will result in the results that we see. Here I'm saying that, if we continue to tell ourselves that we're not good enough, that we're socially awkward, that we're a failure, that apologizing for being ourselves, it's very, very hard to feel good when that's going on. But to notice that, as with making a cake, you have a kitchen stocked with all the ingredients you want. But just because they're there doesn't mean you'll use them. So you're making a lovely cake, you've salt in your press, you're not going to just take that out and start using it because it's there. So we might have these kind of negative thoughts or whatever, but we don't need to use them. Equally, we have all these positive thoughts that we can use. But again, going back to our self-image, based on how that feels, one of these will be easier to use than the other. As in, if we have a negative self-image, the negative thoughts will seem apt and appropriate. But again, know that that's not the truth. That's the story we're telling ourselves. And again, with the thought mood diary, I just want you to become aware of this. I don't want you to try and change this, because that can lead to more frustration, because it's not an easy thing to change. But as you become aware of it, and as you start seeing the link between these things, then all of a sudden it's, well, do I want to feel miserable? Actually, no. Okay, well, what am I thinking? How can I change that? And that's where things start. It's, again, not intellectually known. It's about experiencing it and replacing those negative thoughts with positive. So again, just simply the power of words we use. Like, these are words that kind of I picked that I used to use when I felt low. Words such as weak, dismayed, dejected, pointless, hopeless, stupid, ugly, depressed. That if you just focus on any of these words for a second or two, you'll notice that feeling. You can't feel good while thinking these words. On the other side, if you start thinking of positive words and insert your own ones here, that, like, you just focus on the word energetic. Just focus on, say, energetic, energetic. Just say it a few times. You'll notice the body response. Again, what we're talking about, the mind or the body can't distinguish what's real and not real. So whatever you're telling yourself, you're going to start feeling that in the body, and your mind is going to start believing it, your subconscious mind. So if you start using positive words, even if you're not feeling good, but just saying energetic and happy and abundant and fulfilled, and you're kind of just giving yourself a few seconds to focus on each word, you will start feeling better. And really, this is just a key to, again, with the thoughts, just notice what thoughts you have. Here are two quotes that are really sum it up. And first is from Carl Jung. He says, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." The second quote is, "If we don't go within, we simply go without." And this is just talking about focusing internally rather than externally, rather than looking at our environments. And I'm not saying environment can have a little bit of an impact, but it's not everything. To start looking at what's going on internally for us and start changing it, and then you start noticing the external will change. This quote comes from a person called Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning, which I would say I'd recommend reading it. I'm only halfway through it, so I will wait till I'm finished before I recommend it. But I've heard a lot about this guy, and he was in concentration camp, a Holocaust survivor. He was locked up in Auschwitz back in the 1940s during World War II, and survived it. Mainly because he knew this. He was fascinated by the mind. I think he was a psychiatrist. But an amazing book on just the power of thoughts and how, you can't think of a worse environment to be in than being Auschwitz in the 1940s. Yet this guy, through how he viewed things and how he looked at things and whatever, was able to see the positives in that. Not the positives, but to see, just how he could somehow have control over his experience in something by focusing on the few tiny little positives that he could, focusing on his family, who he'd see when he left, when he got out, and things like that. While a lot of people were the opposite, which I think the majority of us would be. Self-image exercise, and this is something I'm going to go through quickly. It's a NLP technique. I don't know if any of you, NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it's Richard Bandler was the founder, and there's a lot of things on YouTube about it. And it's a kind of a quick fix thing, but it does work. So what I would say is think of the qualities, again, with the situation that you want to do with, when I beat social anxiety, then I will do this, that goal. To think of the qualities you'd like to have for that. So like if you want to be social, you want to feel confident. You want to feel at ease with people. You want to feel that you can talk. So then find a role model who possesses these qualities. Think of somebody. Like for me, again, when I started giving these presentations, I would want to be, I'd watch Tony Robbins over and over again, because that was somebody that he'd inspire me with confidence, but to see how he talked to people. And obviously I'm nothing like Tony Robbins, but in my mind, it gave me something to aim for. Because when we think of ourselves in this situation, if I thought of myself standing up in front of people, all I'd see is fear. All I'd see is this kind of, what the hell am I doing here? While if I picture Tony Robbins, I go, well, actually, yeah, he can stand up. He can do this because he is great. And then think of the situation that you'd like to feel comfortable in. Again, talking about, just for the sake of this as an example, talking about giving a presentation. And this what they would hear. So what you do is you think of the situation that you want. So imagine, for example, I want to give a presentation. I'm thinking of Tony Robbins. So I want to nearly play a movie in my mind of Tony Robbins just stepping up on stage and just starting to talk. And to see what he would see. Notice his body language. Notice his tone of voice. Notice how confident he is. And just bring that and experience that and kind of look at it and see it. Then rewind that movie and play it again, but this time I am Tony Robbins. I'm seeing through his eyes. So I see myself walking up on stage. I feel what it's like to be Tony Robbins, and to have that confidence and how easy it is for him to do this. That to be, if I was him, this would be so easy. And to feel that, and feel that good feeling that comes with it, and feel again, just to see what he would see, to notice what he feels, to hear what he hears. All this and go through it. Then to rewind that video again and keep those feelings, keep that confidence that you had, but step into it as yourself. And just go through the video again and just see it and see yourself as being confident. How impactful our self-image is that it's very hard for us to even see ourselves as being confident if we're not confident. If we're socially anxious, it's very hard for us to see ourselves not being socially anxious, because that's what our self-image is telling us. So by picking a role model and imagining what it's like for them, that allows us to get those feelings of what it would be like to be socially at ease, or to feel confident standing up on stage. Because our self-image lets go of that. We see this person as being confident, so it's okay to imagine being confident. And it's to get ourselves to step into that feeling, and to understand what it is. And that's kind of a starting point. And this is something that if you practice more and more, I used to do when I'd be going out. I'd imagine somebody being a really confident person socially and play what it would be like to be them, and then try and bring that feeling with me. And it was really, really worked well for me. So again, I'm running way over time here. Let's see, I thought I'd be finishing an hour, but probably another 20 minutes or so. So again, where our focus goes, and this is a key. And again, I've talked about our thoughts. That initially, positive psychology, I was thinking, okay, I just won't think negative and I'll feel good. But then I had that kind of, I was talking about Newton's law, that every action is an equal and opposite reaction, that I'd be trying to force myself, I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy. Yes, my mind would be going, no, you're not. Who are you kidding? And the subconscious mind would always win. Those were the real feelings. So what I have here, can we control our thoughts? And the simple answer is no. And I'll go in and explain this. This is not to get dejected by it. Thoughts come from anywhere and they just pop into our head. Like if we're walking down a street, we'll notice somebody go, oh, I really like their smile. Then you go, oh, look at that red car. Then, oh, what will I have for dinner tonight? Or did I turn the iron off? As in the mind just jumps around and these random thoughts come in from anywhere. What we can control is, do we focus on them? Because thoughts are thoughts, they'll be there. It's like the weather. That it'll be sunny, especially here in the UK. Go to Ireland and it's even more extreme. That it'll be raining one day, it'll be sunny the next. We can't control it. But we can control that we can enjoy it. Rather than trying to control the weather, we put up an umbrella that protects us from the rain. So this thing that rather than trying to control our thoughts, just kind of let it flow if you can. And notice the attachment that you put to it, because it's never the thought itself that starts something. It's what we add to it. It's the meaning that we put with it that kind of we'll have a thought of, I'm not good enough. And if we can just see that and kind of just let it go and not judge it, that thought really has no power. It's when we have the thought, I'm not good enough, and then we follow up with, yeah, nobody likes me, or I'm in this situation, everybody's looking at me. And then that leads to another thought, they all think I'm weird. And then that leads to another thought is, I need to get out of here. And that leads to another thought, I'm like terrible in situations. That leads to another thought. And you get caught up in this cycle. But to know that it's those meanings, that story that we tell ourselves, that really is the impact. It's not about that initial thought, because we'll have random thoughts. And the thing is, the more we practice this and the more we become aware of it, the easier it is to just let thoughts flow, let thoughts go, and not attach ourselves to them, not attach judgment to them. Again, it's like a bully, that if somebody's trying to bully us and we try and run away from them, the bully will know it's getting to us and it will chase us. This is the thing, if we have thoughts and we try and run away from them, then they're even more powerful. If we confront the bully and start trying to fight with them, the bully knows it's getting a reaction, they will just continue with it. If we try and fight our thoughts, it's kind of, no, I do feel good, no, I do, whatever. Again, it's bringing up that negative thought, and that's the main focus. While if somebody's trying to bully us, and apologies for anybody who has gone through this, but if we can just become aware of it, let the bully see that we know what he's doing, but not to react to it, not judge to it. Soon they get bored and they move on to somebody else. And this is the thing about thoughts, to be able to bring our focus to it and see the thought, but don't judge it, don't fight it, don't do anything. Just try to see it and just let it float by as if it's a cloud. Brilliant metaphor. If you imagine each thought as being a cloud, that cloud, if you just allow it to float by, the blue sky is always there and it's always going to be behind it. But when we start attaching more thoughts to it, it's as if we're starting to fill that cloud with darker and darker clouds, or that sky with darker and darker clouds. So again, to notice the stories that you tell and how they affect yourself. And also notice that stories are always on a timeline. They're never in the present. It's something in the future that we're thinking about, or something in the past that we're thinking about, that actually takes us out of the present moment. Now, normally if we're totally present, we don't need thought, or thought would be very, very little. Another way of changing focus is just gratitude. I'm so happy and grateful that I have a roof over my head. I'm so happy and grateful that I can go get a cup of coffee. I'm so happy and grateful that I have a good friend. I'm so happy and grateful for whatever it may be. And to just start each day with this. And I remember when I started working in positive psychology, working on myself, getting up one morning and feeling absolutely miserable, wanting my bed to just swallow me up, didn't want to go to work. And I remember I had heard that gratitude worked, so I said I'd try it. And I just did this for maybe 2 minutes as I was brushing my teeth, as I was getting ready. I'm so happy and grateful for whatever. I'm so happy and grateful to have a job to go to. I didn't. It's really just a happy and grateful bit. It's the real thing in this. And I remember skipping down the street to get the bus after 2 minutes of doing this. It really can be incredible. Gratitude, I can't overemphasize how important it is. I've got a few stories here. Let's see, how much time have I left? Right, okay, so I've gone 55 minutes. That a tiny change can make a massive difference. And this is a story that I remember hearing from, again, Tony Robbins. And he went out to play golf with a friend. And his friend was a golf instructor, so obviously better. And Tony just went out and they played. And Tony was quite close to him. Lost by a few shots and went home thinking, geez, I'm good at this game. And I started saying, well, maybe I'll play him in a few days' time and I can beat him. So they turned up 2 days later to play. And Tony took the first shot and it just went off 40 yards away from where he's aiming. So that was okay. Next tee off, the exact same. After around 4 or 5 holes, every shot he was taking was just way off. And he started getting really, really frustrated with it. And he started blaming the game. This game is ridiculous. How can somebody be so inconsistent? And his friend wasn't really saying much. He was kind of just laughing to himself a bit. And that frustrated Tony more. And he took another shot and ended something like 60 yards away from where he was aiming. And he just threw his golf club down and said, this game is stupid, I want to give up. And his friend said, you're actually not that far off. And this infuriated Tony. He said, what do you mean I'm not that far off? Look, I'm 60 yards away. How can you say that's not far? And he said, you're actually only a millimetre. I was going, how can you see that as being a millimetre? That's taking positive psychology to an extreme. That's 60 yards. That's not a millimetre. So his friend said, just take a few deep breaths, take a step back, slow down. And now look at it. What you see is 60 yards because you're focusing way out there. And that is 60 yards. But if you bring that back to your golf club and you change your angle by a millimetre, by a degree, all of a sudden that 60 yards disappears. That we look at these things and we think we need to make huge changes. We need to make massive things to make big impact in our lives. While a lot of time, a tiny change internally, even if it becomes an awareness of our thoughts and how they affect our lives, that change can end up having a huge impact on your life. That it's again come back to that Viktor Frankl. If we don't look within, we will always go without. And this is the thing that we're always focusing outside. We need to bring the focus back in to us and to not try to change everything. Try and make one small change that I'm going to smile today. I'm going to smile at someone. I'm going to help somebody today. Some little thing. And just bring it back and know that's coming from your heart. That can make a bigger change than trying to change the external world ever can. And the knock-on effect of that can be amazing. Again, so my Groundhog Day here, where a film I'd recommend you I'd recommend you watch. And the one thing I loved about Groundhog Day is that at the start, there's this character, and apologies if I spoil this for anybody, there's this character who doesn't like his work colleagues, doesn't like his job, is in a town that he doesn't like, the weather he hates, and he just wants to get away from it. But then he gets stuck in the same day over and over again, which is really apt when it comes to depression or social anxiety, that we feel we're living with the same thing over and over again. Yeah, at the end of this film, his experience is completely different. And I'd like you to, if you do watch it, just ask, what is the difference? Because it's the same day at the start and at the end. It's the same town at the start and at the end. It's the same people, the same weather, the same everything. Nothing externally has changed. Yet his experience is completely different. And it's because he's worked on himself internally. He has changed his view on people. He's changed his view on life. And that has a huge impact. So rather than trying to change external things, and I'm not saying you don't have to change external things, there are things you can change, but to keep working on yourself and try to change just things internally will really make a difference. So the power of now, again, mindfulness is a big thing. Kind of just bring yourself back to the moment. And I think this is the one thing that we always think, well, I'll be present when I get better or when I do whatever. While really it's by being present that's what allows us the space to begin our recovery. So what I'd ask you to do is just go through again. Please email me. I'll send you these things if you want, because they are helpful to slow down and just focus on your breathing. And that is just bringing yourself back into your moment. Your breathing is always present. Actually, focusing on your body is a great thing because your body is ever present. Our mind will be all over the place. So we'll jump from what we want for dinner in an hour's time to, I can't believe that guy said that to me 10 years ago, to, as a kid, what memory I had. The mind is always jumping between different times. The body is always present. So when we can focus on the energy within us, that is a real grounding. when you start focusing on your breath and you slow things down, then I want you to notice the following and say them out loud. 5 things that you can see. To just look around your room or look around where you are and say, I see a television. I see a laptop. I see a picture frame. I see whatever. Then 4 things that you can feel. I feel warmth in the air. I feel a breeze. I feel a tingling sensation in my hand. I feel whatever. Then 3 things that you can hear. I can hear a dog barking in the background. I can hear whatever. 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste. I can taste the toothpaste that I used a while back. And this is really just bring your focus to things that are present and in the moment. And this is a really excellent grounding exercise. And as a continuation of that, what I'd like you to do is to pick 3 things that you do daily. So it could be walking to the bus. It could be buying something in a shop. It could be being on your commute. It could be having a shower in the morning. It could be having breakfast. But 3 things that you do daily. And decide I'm going to try and be mindful doing these. And the reason for this is to build a pattern that after you practice this, you'll be sitting down to have breakfast. You'll be thinking about going to work. You'll be doing whatever. And then you go, actually, this is my mindful time. I have to slow down. And again, another book that I read, it's kind of Mind, Body, Nutrition. I was talking about how nutrition works in the body and how mindfulness helps with that. What he was saying that to really enjoy it, if you take 5 minutes to have breakfast, take 10, double the time that you take, slow down. To even do that if you're having breakfast, take 10 minutes rather than 5 minutes. If you're walking to the bus, take 10 minutes rather than 2 minutes or whatever length of time it takes. Just slow down and be mindful and realize there's nowhere else you need to be. You're just in this moment. That's all that exists, and that's all that ever exists. It's just a series of continued moments that we live through. And yeah, to just bring mindfulness into these 3 areas of your life, and just in those moments, the rest of the time, you don't need to be mindful. The rest of the time, you can do what you want to be, do what you always do every day. But for these 3 moments, just try and be mindful and notice how that impacts you. Again, facing our fears, and this is the thing that we talk about, understanding that anxiety is natural. There's a brilliant video on YouTube. If you type in Will Smith skydiving, it will come up where he's talking about the fear of skydiving, where he goes out with friends and they say, let's go skydiving tomorrow. And he goes, yeah, let's do that. And then he's there, brilliant. Then he goes back to bed and he goes, what the hell did I just agree to? And he can't sleep because he's scared of going skydiving. And then the next morning he gets up and goes, hope nobody else has turned up. And he notices all his friends are there and they're all really confident or pretending to be confident. And he's terrified of doing this skydive. Then he's on the plane and it's rising up in the air and he's even more scared. And then he's at the doorway about to jump. And this instructor says, I'm going to count to 3 and we're going to jump on that count. So 1, 2, and he just pushes him out. And he talks about once he's pushed out and in the moment, that fear evaporates. All of a sudden it turns to bliss. He starts noticing things. He starts feeling this real feeling of just joy. And this is doing the thing that he was terrified of doing. That the fear is always greatest building up before we do these things. That again, with giving a talk, that I will always feel a little bit nervous doing it. But then once I start, it just flows. It's okay. Yet it's the thoughts I put to it before that increase that fear. And it's a really good thing to understand, because another thing that I've noticed, and I really want to explain this better maybe in another thing, is that taking being in a social situation as being an example, that the fear we feel going into a social situation might last for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. And it can feel natural to try and run away from that. But when we run away from that fear, or because of that fear, all of a sudden this guilt follows us, and this beating ourselves up, etc. And we feel bad for a week because of that. So to notice that those moments of fear, there's actually a lot to be learned in them. If you can see the fear as just being a story. If we see the fear as being something that we should genuinely be terrified of, then it can be hard to break free from it. And this is again why that thought mood diary is important. Just to start noticing these things for being stories rather than being the truth, rather than being fact. And to notice that When we don't go through with fears or something that scares us, it seems to linger with us a lot longer than actually going through it. How many times have we had to give a presentation or something? We don't do it, and then when it's over, we go, why didn't I do that? I could have done it. Yeah, when we're caught up in it, it feels as if it's impossible to do. But when we don't do it, then that kind of bad feeling lingers for ages. So facing our fears, and this is removing the power of limiting belief. So to identify a limiting subconscious thought, i.e. feeling not feeling good enough, and think about how this limiting thought is impacting your life. As in, if I'm not feeling good enough, I'm avoiding people, I'm not doing as well as I could do in work, etc., etc. List how this limiting belief impacts your life going forward. If I keep this limiting belief with me, how is my life going to be? If I always feel not good enough in a year's time, I'm going to feel maybe a little bit alone. I'm going to wish I was doing better in work. I was going to all these things, and just write it out and be honest. And then just take a step and go, decide that this thought is not real. It is just a thought. You have the power to choose the story you put with this. And then to not label yourself with this limiting subconscious thought. Something that I did when I started to overcome social anxiety was that I stopped labeling myself as being socially anxious. And that's not to say I felt better or felt at ease with things by not labeling myself. But what I found was that if I was going to a social event and then decided I couldn't do it, I'd be sitting at home and I'd feel powerless because I had this social anxiety that was destroying my life. And I just beat myself up. How unlucky can I be that I have social anxiety? How lucky is everybody else that they don't? And this social anxiety was everything. All of a sudden, when I stopped labeling myself at that, if I was sitting at home after saying I wouldn't go to a social event, I could see it as being my choice. I chose not to go to this social event. And what I found with that was it kind of put me back in control. And a lot of the time I'd go, actually, I'd much rather go. And I'd get up and actually push myself to go through with it. But when I was defining myself as being socially anxious, I was powerless to do that. I had no choice in the matter. And it's an interesting thing. You just notice the labels you give you and notice how they impact your life. And again, taking action. Just this thing, what if social anxiety didn't exist? And again, going back to when I beat social anxiety, I will have an amazing social life. While in reality, it was by creating an amazing social life was how I beat social anxiety, to look at these things. And again, going back to the list that you might have done at the start, that exercise that we went through, where you talk about what it would be if social anxiety didn't exist, what would you be doing, how would your life be different, etc., etc., and the 5 things that you'd love to do. What can you start doing this week to start creating that little thing that you want? As in, for me, it was a social life. So I push myself to meet a friend for coffee or go to meet a few friends at a group thing or whatever. But just little things that you can start doing to start moving forward rather than waiting for social anxiety to disappear in order to do these things. Start doing them, and then slowly you'll start noticing social anxiety disappears. And again, this comes back to mindfulness actions we can take. And I love this. 2 steps to a peaceful life. Show up and then respond to what shows up. And this means we're free from stories. You're just turning up. All we can do is respond to things. How many times have we rehearsed something and then just shown up and it's been so much easier than we ever, our rehearsal ever could have thought it would be? That you just see life as being just these series of moments. We just show up and we respond to what shows up. If something doesn't go well, we learn from it. We learn from experience. But it is this kind of continual taking action and just moving forward, but not in a kind of a, let's take action, let's be so proactive that we're going to burn ourselves out. It's just show up, just go, try to listen to what feels right and go with it. This is an amazing thing. It's called the Sedona method, and I'd recommend anybody check it out, where it's 4 steps. And it's think of a problem you have and now focus on the feeling it gives you. If it is that feeling of fear, focus on that fear. Take a deep breath and accept how it feels. Welcome it. Well, thank you, fear, for being there. Thank your subconscious for this feeling, but let it know it's no longer required. To go, I feel this fear. Focus on it. And you'll realize when you start focusing on it, again, the stealth thing of these things, trying to run away from it, increases its power. If you can actually just focus on it, feel where in the body you're feeling it, and just bring your focus to it, it can start to slide away or fade a little bit. And then thank your subconscious. Say, thank you for keeping me safe. This fear is coming up to keep me safe. So thank you, my subconscious, for doing this. But I don't need you to do this anymore. But thank you. And now ask yourself, do I think I'm able to let go of this feeling? Yes. Am I willing to let go of this feeling? Yes. When can I let go of this feeling? Now. And just be honest with what answer comes up. And keep repeating this over and over again. Just, do I think I'm able to let go of this feeling? Am I willing to let go of this feeling? This is asking permission, allowing yourself to let go. And when can I let go? Again, if you want, please email me if you want this, and I will send it to you. Another brilliant thing is just to help somebody. Ask yourself, who can I serve today? And it just takes you out of yourself, out of that kind of thought process of things, and you feel good by doing something. And I'd recommend just helping people in any little way possible. So yeah, we're coming to the end here, and it's just a few books that I'd recommend reading, and I hope you can see them there. It's one, Instant Confidence by Paul McKenna. Very short, nice and easy, and really good for kind of just finding these kind of instant moments of feeling good. And again, this is using NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming that I mentioned. Cybernetics, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, brilliant on self-image. Somebody Should Have Told Us, Jack Pransky, an amazing book, really simple, and it's just about allowing yourself to be you, allowing life to happen, but getting into the flow in life. And it's about it's effortless. It's actually about how our thoughts and how we try and think about doing things actually slow us down. Loyalty to Your Soul by Ron and Mary Hulnick. Another amazing book. And it does mention God, but it's not religious. And really, I think when it comes to God and religion, it's more what our definition of God is, that we say that word and we probably all have different definitions of it, but we all assume the other person is thinking the exact same as we're thinking. But really, Loyalty to Your Soul is about just connecting with yourself. And really, really good book. Stop Thinking, Start Living, Richard Carlson. I've mentioned it, mentioned that story in it, really good. The Miracle Morning, if you want to put a routine together for how to start your day, it's brilliant. And then The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, again, ties in with Somebody Should Have Told Us, with Loyalty to Your Soul, just being present and being in the moment. Yeah, so that's it for the moment. I will try and run this again and get it set up correctly. I do apologize for how the presentation went. Maybe you could see the slideshow, and by me actually doing this, it has kind of messed it up for you. But I would love to hear feedback on this, or any questions you have. Please feel free to ask. And again, you can reach me through the London Social Anxiety Meetup group. You can email me. I've given my personal email address here, carloreilly80@gmail.com, or go to my website, www.carloreilly.com. That's CARLOREILLY.com. And there's a form there that you can fill out if you want to get in touch. But if anybody wants to go into more depth on this, or anybody feels they don't understand things or whatever, again, please get in touch. And I'm very happy to go on either a phone call, go on a Skype call. We can just have a talk about what's going on for you and how maybe little things in this we can start implementing into your life. And again, this is something that I've experienced, and anything that I talk about, I have worked through it myself. I would never talk about things that I haven't gone through or haven't tried. But I genuinely hope this has been of some help. Again, if not, please give me some feedback, because I want to learn how to do a webinar properly. I think that'd be a really good start. But two, I want to be able to tailor these to what people need. And over the upcoming months, I want to get into other subjects where we go into more, maybe into mindfulness. We go more into just being present and how we can really get into flow with life and all these things. And again, I'd love to hear topics that you would like to go into, and I can work around that. Because the one thing is, if you give me feedback, there's probably a huge percentage in the group that want the same feedback but are kind of afraid to ask, or want the same topic discussed but are afraid to ask. So anyway, again, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope it was of some use. Again, I'd love to hear from you, and maybe comments are working, and if I go on my YouTube, I'll see them there. But again, thank you. And I hope it's made some sense. I hope there's something you got out of this. And I wish you a really happy evening, a really happy tomorrow, a really happy weekend. And please always feel free to get in touch with me. I set up this group to help people. I really, really want to help people because I know what it's like to go through social anxiety. So, and yeah, on that note, I will leave you if I can know how to turn this off. But again, thank you so much for joining me. Take care. Bye.